Back for round 2, we won the die roll and are going to play first. This hand is interesting. It is kind of prone to flooding, but I kind of like it because Lotus Cobra is going to allow a pretty early activation of the Ravine. Our mana is perfect, and Gadokteak might be amazing. Might be bad, but I think it's a keepable hand. I'm not going to mulligan. With a deck that has so many high impact cards as we do, I think we can be a little more lenient on keeping some of these hands. Now, Experiment 1 is going to evolve once of one of our creatures, so we can go with Lotus Cobra here to make sure that we are going to have the mana to play as many spells as possible next turn. Let's just drop the Experiment. Now we could go with Plains to play Godok, but we actually don't need it, so I'm going to generate a white with Lotus Cobra, drop Gadokteak, evolve the Experiment, and attack for 2. If we draw an Arid Mesa next turn, we can actually attack with Raging Ravine, but if we don't, we are still doing fine. Oh wow. Might have called that. It's not really great because we are looking to draw spells, but I've seen worse draws. Oh, I think we might have actually not even needed that. Maybe my math was off. It looks like we could have activated Raging Ravine anyway, because Arid Mesa only generated 1 extra mana, which we didn't need. So yeah, I don't know what went through my mind there, but we are looking at quite a good start on our side here. Academy Rector. So the big question is our opponent up to some crazy combo or not? I think we're just going to find out. I'm not going to stop attacking, so if we had a way to get through here that would involve, well, how do I put this? We need to deal 8 to him. So if we had a way to deal 8 in the next turn without the Rector dying this turn, then I would take it. But we don't have a creature to play, so just getting in there for the maximum amount of damage is the best we can do. It looks like our opponent didn't want to block Raging Ravine to survive on 2 life, which means that his enchantments can't be that crazy. So the disadvantage is that we don't really know what we are up against. So I'm going to keep in Gadokteak because our opponent didn't do anything scary. So it might be the performance of Gadokteak that had that effect. Might not be. So we don't really know. Ulamog isn't an option, but Winter Orb is always interesting. It looked like our opponent was playing a very slow deck and then dropping something like Academy Rector. So Winter Orb might punish him very, very well. We also might want Naturalize, given that our opponent has Academy Rector, so there isn't... Well, we definitely know that he has targets to Naturalize, and Naturalize is a lot cheaper than, let's say, Indrik Stormhowler or Primal Command. So if we want to punish our opponent being somewhat slow, then we probably want the Winter Orb, and we might want the Naturalize to hedge against any kind of troublesome permanents that make life miserable for us. It would be easier to sideboard if we knew better what our opponent was up to. It looked like he was just on a 4-color value deck that didn't play blue, which would mean that he needs a lot of powerful endgame creatures or a lot of removal, and both of which we didn't really see, but which was due to our own draw, of course. So I think Winter Orb is the card we definitely want, and I'm going to wait on Naturalize to see what he actually is getting out of his deck or what he's actually playing. Orcish Lumberjack, once again, the card we could cut here, as it's not going to be super important to be super fast, but maybe we want to take out something like Troll Ascetic instead. Don't know if Troll Ascetic or Blastoderm are worse. Maybe the Blastoderm is not the card we want, but yeah, not sure on that last cut that we had to make there. Opponent is on the play. We have a lot of lands, which is nice. Raging Ravine and Winter Orb is a bad combo, but I'm going to keep this. It might be a little bit greedy, but let's see how that works out. Talking of greedy, our opponent's mana base is also quite interesting. Okay, so if we Green Suns for a mana source, then we can drop Obstinate Baloth next turn and then follow it up with Tarmogoyf and Winter Orb potentially. And I like that a lot. We could actually get the Experiment one, but the fact that Tarmogoyf is so little means that Boreal Druid is most likely going to be best here. Also, given that we have Winter Orb in play, we do want an additional mana source. The fact that our opponent is on Eversense Pilgrim means that Winter Orb is a lot worse. And we might actually not cast it because of that reason. Now, if our opponent plus ones Liliana here, then we have two options. We could discard Winter Orb because it grows our Tarmogoyf, but somehow I think that discarding Obstinate Baloth to just put it into play has to be the stronger option. Opponent has some nice cards here. Hopefully plussing Liliana now. We're going to attack Liliana and probably getting a chump block from Skinrender here because our opponent is hoping to -2 Liliana for obvious reasons. And we are going to make sure that he's forced to do so with another huge fatty on our side. I'm not really interested in dropping Winter Orb at this point anymore. Doesn't look like it's going to screw him sufficiently, and we want to get in with Raging Ravine starting next turn. Now that we've seen more of his deck, I think that Winter Orb can come out again. It's not the card that you want to be playing against a deck with Eversense Pilgrim and Liliana of the Veil. Also, these tempo cards here make Winter Orb look a lot weaker than I thought it could be in this matchup. So if our opponent searched for a land, yeah, it wouldn't have been Caves of Koilos, so he basically got Recurring Nightmare here to start chaining Skin Renders, potentially. Opponent is activating Liliana so that he doesn't have to discard Recurring Nightmare, which is smart. And I'm going to hold on onto the Winter Orb for one turn because it's possible that I might want to cast it. Given that our opponent is probably sacrificing the Pilgrim here and might be tapping out again, we'll see. overall, I think it's much more likely that activating the Ravine is what we want to be doing. So here, opponent has Oran Viper, which could deal that. Well, we could draw him additional cards, but we have the recurring nightmare to worry about. So we are under a lot of trouble here. And what we could do is try to we can kill Liliana with Obstinate Baloth, and it's somewhat unlikely that our opponent is going to block because he wants a creature for recurring nightmare in play, and if he does block, then we still have Raging Ravine to deal with Liliana next turn. So this is actually interesting because if we get our opponent's single creature off the board, then Winter Orb might make an appearance. And now that our opponent didn't block, so the Planeswalker threat is gone, we can actually drop the Winter Orb to make sure that Recurring Nightmare doesn't re-enter the battlefield. It's not a perfect spot to be in, but we can't afford to keep open 5 to get to block Oran Viper with Raging Ravine, because we would just enable him to drop Recurring Nightmare, get back Skin Render, and continue this chain that's just very bad for us. I'm going to block here. Don't want him to draw into lands, and the Woolly Thoctor is pretty meaningless anyway. So now the problem is that attacking with Raging Ravine doesn't do anything. So I would much rather block with it, to be honest. Given that under a Winter Orb, we won't be able to use it reliably anyway. Opponent is attacking, which I find very interesting because we do have the Raging Ravine to block. And if we get his creature off the board, then we are looking very fine against his Recurring Nightmare. I don't think that I agree with this decision on his part. Basilica, another card that's good against Winter Orb. So our opponent has quite a lot of nice cards against Winter Orb. That's something that we can say now. Looks like our opponent is saving up to something. He's going to be on 5 mana pretty soon. And we can hit Scavenging Ooze here, and that's going to be crucial in fighting off Recurring Nightmare. And it also hits for quite a bit. Okay, our opponent hitting his 6th land. And from now on, Winter Orb is going to be a problem for us and not for him. And this is interesting. I don't think that's going to work for our opponent, because we can eat Academy Rector with Scavenging Ooze. So let's, well, to be honest, let's just play it super safe and leave open as much mana as possible. So now we ate the Rector, and that means that the trigger doesn't resolve. It's if you do, and that didn't happen. So we have our opponent down to 4, with Scavenging Ooze being lethal as well if we spend that last mana. And Recurring Nightmare also not going to be able to do anything because of Scavenging Ooze's ability. Okay, so that was a rather easy match, I feel like. Winter Orb just actually doing some work after our opponent couldn't really play around everything that we had available. I strongly disagree with his Oran Viper attack. I think if anything that lost him the game. And our land-heavy hand, of course, somehow profited from Winter Orb, despite the obvious anti-synergy with the man lands. And yeah, overall, a pretty nice showing by our deck, and we made the finals.